Pat, thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
What an incredible story and project the Heritage Project is. Something that obviously came to our attention, it was about maybe 12 months ago.
Sure.
Every time I hear a story about it, I get excited. So really, really excited to have you on here. Broad question to start with. Talk about the thought behind it, the inspiration, and how you've built this thing.
Yeah, great. So my name's Pat McStay. I'm the director of the ECNL Heritage Project. It really came about, I think, as all decent ideas come about, is that there was a problem that I didn't know how to solve. And so I asked a few people that were smarter than me and kind of came up with the idea. So I was started scouting with Western Samoa, with their boys and girls, but on the women's side mostly. And I had some early success looking up Samoan last names, surnames on the internet, some luck finding 5 or 6 players that were dual nationals, parents or grandparents were from Samoa. They were able to get passports, did really well, featured in the 15s or the 16s, and the coaching staff were pretty happy with it. So we continued. 3 or 4 months later, after I found those players, my internet searches kind of dried up. And so I was talking to my executive director at the time, was Jay Howell, or is Jay Howell, who is part of the ECNL. And so I was asking him if there was a place I could look within the ECNL to find dual nationals, and kind of knowing that there wasn't, but maybe I had an idea, but trying to, get him to talk about it a little bit, and said, I think there should be a database of dual nationals. I think that would be a decent idea. And he was like, well, you should write up exactly what you're thinking. And so I kind of wrote it up, sent it to him, waited, a month, and he got back to me and said, hey, you should talk to the ECNL about this. I think this is a good idea for a project. And talked to Christian Lavers. 4 months later, we were starting the Heritage Project. That was about 2.5 years ago. So got it off the ground, I think 2 AGMs ago, where we kind of announced it formally. And I went from having an email come to me once a week to, we have 1,900 players in the database from 112 countries. And we've had players from the ECNL feature from Puerto Rico, Croatia, a lot of CONCACAF nations, but into Europe and Asia. And now the group that I was working with, Western Samoa, finally qualified for the very first time for any Western Samoa youth national team or full national team into the World Cup, U17 World Cup, this October in Morocco. So, and that roster will feature, I believe, 11 ECNL players, possibly more. So pretty proud of the project, and it just keeps making me more busy the more I discover and the bigger it gets. So
fantastic. I didn't know about how quickly you've got that off the ground, but when you're saying that, Christian spoke at our summit last year, so January 24.
Okay.
And I remember one of his things was, when you have ideas in the organization, get them out quick and do it and learn from action.
Sure.
So obviously he stood by that. I mean, what did that initial phase from idea to execution, what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, my personality is, I usually have 99 bad ideas that I throw out to people, and eventually one good one sticks. And so I was coming up on my 100th idea with this. So the first 99 ideas, I don't know what they were, but this one I had a feeling it was going to be pretty good. I was like, this is something that it can be done, first of all. Doesn't take a lot of resources, but it does take some thinking. So Christian was very open to it. Put me in contact with 2 or 3 other people to kind of bounce ideas. What would this look like? Does it go on the website? How do we reach out to people? type of questions. And so I was drawing a little bit on my experience with Samoa and the forms that we use to intake players. So I was kind of basing it off that a little bit. And yeah, we launched it, and I thought that just finding different media outlets, avenues to try and get the information to people similar to this would be a way to increase the knowledge and pathways for players. Because even though we're 2.5 years into the ECNL Heritage Project, there are plenty of players who still don't know about it, who may be dual nationals. So me getting out onto the ECNL podcast, talking with you, making connections, forming relationships with different directors. And obviously there's some director turnover also. So you may have someone that was at a club for 10 years and now there's a brand new person. So there's constant re-education going on. You also have the U12s that become U13s. And so there's a new group of players that are always coming into the ECNL. So there's a lot of education, keeping it in front of directors and parents, and then just finding new and interesting ways to get the information out. So I appreciate Surf for allowing me to talk about it.
No, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. A subject that is close to Irish people's heart is the 1990 World Cup, when the majority of the team were not born in Ireland.
Sure.
I promise you there's a question in this eventually. Is it a FIFA law of like grandparent, or what are the requirements to get eligibility to play for a international team? Sure.
And it's a great question that has a sort of black and white answer. It is normally if the player has a parent or grandparent. Obviously the easiest one is the player was born in that country. Let's go backwards. If they're not born in that country, they're born in America, but a parent, the mother or father, was born in that country. Let's take Ireland, for example. Then they would now need an Irish passport, or I guess it would be British passport potentially. And then they would then need to have their player get one. If you go back another generation, that's usually the last. You can't go back more than grandparents. So if the grandparents were born in that country, but then the parents were born in America and the player was born in America, still eligible, but it's just a larger hurdle because you need to go back to the grandparents, alive or deceased, and find the paperwork that they have a passport for that country. The birth certificate says, and then they need to have a passport. And then you can, as the parent, get a passport. So you can use that paperwork as the parent to get yourself a passport from that country. And then once they get that passport, then the player needs to get the passport. So even if you're 2 generations back, you can use the birth certificate to get yourself a passport to then get your player a passport. So long story short, it all goes back to, is your player able to get that country's passport? And so some countries have different rules and time frames about how quickly it takes. But I always suggest, because I'm not the passport paperwork expert, that they go to their embassy to ask those questions, or the consulate, embassy consulate within the United States to go ask that question.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then I suppose for clarity, you would advise them to start this process before all that, like if you have eligibility initially, get in your system?
Yes. From a footballing perspective, I'm also a scout or a talent identification scout in the US for England. So as the talent ID scout in America for England's women's youth national teams, the players that are going to have priority because their access to be put into a camp and national team is the easiest are the ones that already have that passport or are in the process of getting it. So there are parents who realize that their player is of a certain level. And so they have already looked down that road, or they have other family reasons for getting dual passports, but they are already going through that process or have completed that process. So a lot of times, if you're being discovered for the first time and you're very, very good, there's usually a camp or something coming up within that next 6 months. Usually that starts at U15 for most federations. So right around that time, if you're coming through the Heritage Project and I send your information on, the first thing they're going to look at is, we might have a camp coming up in November. How quickly can they get their passport? Because they really can't do much until you have it. So there are some players who are dual nationals for England, for example, don't have their passport. Very good players. The next process is a sit and wait game for us. So we are waiting for them to acquire or start the process for that passport before we really can do anything on the field. So the paperwork comes first.
Has your role changed with that England role? Were you at the start? Because I can imagine that there's a lot of federations that were, hey, we need to jump on this, we need to move on this here.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know, again, just definitely from a Northern Ireland perspective, they wouldn't have the budget to come over for all these trips. So
definitely.
Were you doing some talent evaluation at the start of this, and has that changed?
I actually was just working with Samoa on a volunteer basis. And then I was also working with the Marshall Islands. So the Marshall Islands just played their very first national team game ever in Arkansas. That took about 2 years to develop a database large enough and the money to actually form it was called the Outrigger Cup. You can probably look it up. But I believe they played Turks and Caicos and the Virgin Islands. I'm sure I'm possibly messing that up, but that was just in August. And so I was doing those things in addition to the ECNL Heritage Project. And you are correct, a lot of the federations, a lot of countries who are actively participating, are extremely thankful that the ECNL is basically their kind of boots on the ground. So while I'm not going out for 40 different countries looking for these players, I'm creating the first step for them. And so once they get this information, they're able to do a lot with it, if they so choose. But talking with Mark Pakula from England for the last 12 months, I think he realized, based on the amount of players and the players we were finding and the quality, that England needed actual talent on the ground here in England. So instead of flying over 10 times a year to go watch players at events, they just decided to hire the first 2 talent ID scouts in America for England. So that's kind of how it came about.
ECNL event, let's take one of those, for example.
Yeah.
So what this looks like in practice when you're looking at because I saw, like, going back to Mark at England, like Mark traveled to the Surf Cup Salou.
Yes.
I think he only had 2 or maybe 3 to watch. Like, that's how, I don't think people understand how serious this is.
Oh, yeah. And England also went to Northern Ireland to watch the surf teams. Yep.
Yeah. So like these coaches, not something where these coaches they're actually putting they're not putting a lot of resources in terms of the travel for some of them, but they're actually putting a big emphasis on it with their team as they build out their youth teams.
Yes, absolutely. England, obviously one of the best women's teams in the world. They're looking in the US specifically. There's obviously other international scouts in Europe, but they have placed an emphasis on the United States, knowing how organized of a structure our youth soccer system is, and ecosystem. and the amount of players that are playing, and also how much further along the United States is in terms of organizing girls' youth soccer. So they know that there's a lot of talent here. They also know there's a lot of dual nationals, just naturally, from our history. So they are putting a lot of time and effort into finding extremely high level players. Yeah. And
All right.
their youth national teams are very good. So they're on the same level as US youth national teams in our meaning England, our opinion. So
Yeah,
those are the types of players we're looking for.
I'd well believe it. Like Mark explained the criteria. I remember one of our calls, and I was kind of taken back by
Sure.
how, you know, his aspirations, which is
Yeah.
great. Without going into details and not trying to divulge any of the criteria or the identification process, but can you talk a little bit about like what standing out at that level kind of requires versus, you know, again, a little bit of education for the parents on what kind of player it takes to get to that level?
Yeah. So they're obviously, these are going to sound very general, I think, to someone who's been in youth soccer for a long time, but technical ability under pressure, decision making, being able to see their effort and resilience come through in a game scenario. They're very big on that. And then details like how many times are they scanning in a minute? So I don't want to go into too much detail, but I was extremely impressed at the level of information that they're requiring from us to gather in order to make decisions for who comes into their youth national teams. So that gives you kind of a little taste. They obviously have their England DNA and how players fit into that, and being dual nationals, it's a little tricky because you're in the American culture trying to potentially fit into the England DNA, but yeah, that's part of it.
There's obviously another question that's, you know, there's going to be surf players and parents listening to this, and
Sure.
coaches even saying, okay, hey, listen, this is brilliant, but we're not in ECNL.
Yes.
What can they do if they're not? What would you advise?
That's a great question. My advice would potentially have them reach out to the federation. You can go on the FIFA website and find every single country, their website. A lot of them are pretty up to date to find that. A lot of them are starting to now have intake forms. So that the Wales, for example, I've been in contact over the last several months. They're very interested in trying to find more dual nationals, and they obviously know about the ECNL Heritage Project. And so their form is actually on the ECNL website. So if you go to the ECNL Heritage Project website, scroll down to the bottom, we've added an additional opportunities or additional pathways area. And I'm hoping to get more. The U.S. Virgin Islands did the same thing. It was up there, but now it's been taken down because their camp is over. But they were looking for specific players for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we did the same thing. So that's one resource. Surf is an extremely large organization where I think that I don't know if you would be the point person, or you might know better who to contact within Surf to then possibly get a hold of me, for example, because we have a relationship. And so while they might not be within the ECNL, they're definitely within the organization that has a lot of ECNL clubs. So it's not a perfect answer, but I would definitely go FIFA website, federation website, try to get a hold of someone within the surf organization. From what information I know about surf is that you guys have had a ton of kids called up to a lot of countries. And so it could just be a matter of trying to connect with someone who's already been called up to that country.
Yeah. Brilliant. Great. No, it's actually a great answer. And yeah, if there's anyone listening that is in that situation, I think definitely, if you reach out to me and let your coaches know. I mean, I think just the advice for coaches as well, Pat, would be, again, a little bit more awareness about this here, that
Yeah,
this
for sure.
opportunity for experiences for players that we probably haven't thought of at this stage.
Absolutely. There is a pathway, and some of the players for the Marshall Islands, for example, I found a player last year. I was playing against a club in Virginia Beach. Actually, I was coaching in Richmond, playing against a club in Virginia Beach, and one of their directors, it was a regional league team, actually. And they said, there's this girl, Marie, who plays on our team. She was adopted. She's from the Marshall Islands. Is she available to be a part of the Marshall Islands national team that you're starting? And the answer was yes, she is. And she's actually one of the top players. And so since the Marshall Islands is starting, it's a very small country. You don't have to be a former U.S. youth national team member in order to be considered. So her pathway looks a whole lot different than someone else's, but she was into a Marshallese camp in the U.S. last year, and I assume that she'll be invited back for decades to come.
Brilliant. That's amazing. The another thing that I think, just to clarify for the parents and players, it's not, she's not going to live in Marshall Islands. It's not a go for 6 months. These trips are probably 4 to 7 days, I'm guessing, Pat.
Yes. Yeah. So the Marshall Islands is a bit of an anomaly. There are more Marshallese that live outside the islands than on the islands, and there's a huge community in Arkansas. So they actually did the first women's camp in Arkansas. So she flew down to Arkansas to participate in that, and that was basically a long weekend, 4 days. England will probably be a week, fly over, and then get acclimated day one, and then you have the week, and then you fly back. So, yeah.
Mostly by yourself?
Me?
No, I said the players. Are they going?
The players. That's a great question. So for Samoa, no, because you're flying. I mean, sometimes when you're flying to Samoa, it's like 4 stops. And so if you're a 15-year-old girl being called into the Samoa national team, a lot of the parents do go. I would think that would be the same for England. I know that some of the U.S. dual nationals that have flown out there have also gone with their parents. Maybe if you're 17, 18, then yeah, I would think that is an option. Although I think that if you have the ability, having your parents go is probably always an option. Yeah. And you're also not getting put into a youth national team pool or a camp until you're about 14 anyway.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's not I don't think it is. So correct me if I'm wrong. It's not a ECNL. Like, it's not a tournament ECNL. It's getting yourself, so say, and I should have asked this before, but say you are in an ECNL club and you do feel as if you have eligibility, the step would not wait for an ECNL tournament or event. The step would be to go into to get yourself in the system tomorrow.
Yes. Yep. So the intake form that we have on the ECNL Heritage Project website also asks for video. And I would say that even as an England scout, I'm very limited in the amount of games I'm going to watch these players. But the amount of video that I'll have on them is endless. So we're always identifying and scouting players based on video. So full games as well as highlights.
Your Y Scout subscription must be insane.
Yeah, Huddle. I've been blessed with a Huddle account from the ECNL, so I get to watch those. But yeah, there's a lot of different softwares out there that I am a part of.
Hey, how on earth are you balancing this with the work in Richmond as well? I guess it must be an insane workload.
I would say it's cyclical. So there are definitely some times where, you know, today I didn't go into my office. I got to go for a run, and my wife works from home, so hung out for a little bit, and now I'm on this Zoom. But then there are other days where I'm jumping. Yesterday, I jumped from a meeting in my office to another meeting outside my office, came home, kids got off the bus, I said goodbye, and then I ran my 2 training sessions for that night. So yeah, there are going to be some heavy days and then some light days. And so when you have light days, you just enjoy them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. All right, last one for you. Just overall landscape wise, do you feel, I mean, obviously the World Cup coming here, and there's a lot of eyes on the youth landscape, and a lot of countries trying to break in commercially, but now this is a different kind of breaking in. This is trying to, I mean, in your world, have you seen this pick up over the last 2 years, 3 years? Are we still in the middle of it, or do you still think it's still?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it'll, this is my prediction because it's only been going on for 2 years, so I've not gone through a whole World Cup cycle. I think it'll pick up after the World Cup, actually. I think people will be extremely excited about national teams and just playing soccer in general. And if we can pair that with getting information out there about the Heritage Project, I think it'll actually pick up. And then we have the Women's World Cup, which is full of dual nationals, even I would think even more so than the men's game. But I think you'd also be surprised how many dual national men there are playing, especially in Europe, because of how close each country is, where parents are born in one place and then move to another, or the US always has at least 2 or 3 born on a base in Germany. So I think that the Women's World Cup, even more diverse, and will be in Rio. I think you're going to Rio next week. And so it'll be an exciting time, and then people will be excited, and then we pair that with the ECNL project, and I think that the numbers will go up again. So yeah, that's what I think.
Amazing. Amazing. It's going to be pretty cool to look at this in 10 years time, and maybe look at a World Cup game where you've played 10 odd players playing there that have come through this. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think we'll actually see it here coming up in the next Women's World Cup. But if you can look down the road, like you said, 2 Women's World Cups from now, what that looks like, and how many players that I can go back into the database and find them when they were U13s or U14s now playing for who knows what country. But yeah. I'll be excited to look back for sure.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, hey Pat, congrats on what you've done, and well done on getting this out and bringing it to the community. We're so excited to hopefully build out a little bit more education and awareness around our community. But if there's anything we can do to continue that, or to kind of amplify that, please let us know, and we'd love to help.
Absolutely, I'm happy to be here. I'll come back on anytime.